I don't think this is really about me. I don't. I think this is about the ideas. I think the moment has come. America's middle class has just been hammered for a generation now. And I don't mean just over one thing. It's been everywhere.
As Senator Elizabeth Warren speaking with Susan Page this week. Susan Page is here. Susan, you were telling us something interesting in the break. That when you asked Elizabeth Warren what the most surprising thing to her since she came to the Senate, what surprised her most about the Senate, she gave you an interesting answer.
She did. She said there are lots of tools in the toolbox. And by that she meant even at hearings when they have regulators in to testify, she has really, and this is an area that, of course, she has a strong background and she knows a lot about. She has pushed, for instance, the SEC to take some tougher steps than they might otherwise have been inclined to do. And I think that is a little bit of an untold story in terms of what influence she has had already in the Senate. Admittedly, there's no big piece of legislation in her name. On the other hand, you could argue that in the 2 years she's been there, who exactly has pushed through big pieces?
Right, nothing is anything he gets through the Senate, as we were talking about in the last segment, seems to die in the House, and then it's the story of Washington right now.
Well, she also is becoming, the voice for progressives in the Senate and in Washington in general, and she has had that effect on the conversation. Democrats are much more willing to talk about sort of progressive, populistic kind of things, and I think she has been one of the big proponents of that. And and again, in the Senate, she does, in a lot of ways, play the opposite to, Ted Cruz or some of the conservative people. And a lot of Democrats like that. They didn't really have somebody in the Senate, other than Harry Reid, who just is sort of a puncher, but they didn't have somebody that would come out and articulate these progressive policy ideas in a sort of combative, I will fight back with you kind of a way that she's done. So,
Governor Dukakis, you said in the last segment, you said you don't think she should be running for president. But I do kind of wonder, and Susan kind of raised the possibility. Look, I think every Democrat right now, every big-name Democrat is kind of waiting on Hillary Clinton, and if she runs, I'm not sure if any of them will run against her. But if Hillary Clinton weren't to run, and suddenly the Democratic race is wide open, and you have Elizabeth Warren, who has this very, very clear and unique message with so much resonance, really we've seen across the country, would you then tell her to take a look at it?
Well, running for the president is the toughest thing you'll ever do, Steve, and it's in a class by itself. I don't care how effective a governor you've been, how effective a senator you've been. And my own view is that at this point in her life, she should be doing exactly what she's doing. And by the way, the point you made, or maybe Susan made, very important. As a legislator, you just don't pass bills. You can have enormous influence on the bureaucracy, on the regulators, on the folks that administer the law. And she understands this. And she's already had great impact. So she's making her influence felt. She gets this. She's doing it. People respect her, and I think to some extent, I'm not sure they fear her, but they certainly are responsive to her. But that's her role, it seems to me, at this point, and it's a particularly effective role that she can be playing.
All right, I want to thank Massachusetts' Michael Dukakis, former governor, and of course, former presidential nominee, for spending part of your morning with us. Really appreciate it. So what do we know now that we didn't know last week?